All day Olivia had been more on edge and nervous than ever. Even one of her fellow waitresses commented, "You're zipping around like an electric broom today, or did you get a scolding from your mother-in-law?" Edith had no intention of hiding anything. "I'm planning to give my resignation today," she replied. "Seriously?" "That's sudden," her friend exclaimed, surprised. "What's going on?" "I've had enough of her scoldings and this entire restaurant. I've found another job." "Found one that's much better than this?" "And another husband too," her friend teased. Olivia didn't want to argue or open up because she had truly reached her breaking point. She had worked as a waitress in a restaurant owned by her mother-in-law for several years. Other girls were wary of Olivia, considering her a close relative of the owner. It was whispered that she was hired to keep an eye on the others. But that wasn't the case at all. Yes, Olivia was in a special position at the restaurant, but not in a good way, quite the opposite. Her mother-in-law took all the tips, even though the waitress's salary wasn't that high. At first, Olivia tried not to argue and timidly asked for at least a little something to make it to payday. But Jill would just curl her lips disdainfully, saying, "Will you ever learn to save money?" "I don't think so, so I'll take all your unplanned earnings. You'll starve yourself and leave my son with nothing. Your salary isn't that small. Many people support their entire families and even help their parents, and you're always complaining about not having enough." Over time, Olivia got used to this and learned to save and support her whole family. Though her family was small, just her husband, and their son. Fortunately, she didn't have to help her mother-in-law, being the owner of the restaurant. But she couldn't expect any help from her either, mostly because she didn't like her daughter-in-law and disapproved of her son's choice. But Archie was that kind of person. He always listened to his mother in everything, except in personal matters. He made his own choices. Honestly, Archie hadn't initially looked at Olivia as a potential wife, but more as someone to have fun with. She understood this perfectly and knew that he had many such women. Olivia might have remained just a temporary fling, but something unexpected happened. She got pregnant. Yes, they didn't take precautions, and it was probably Archie's fault because what could you expect from Olivia? She had no experience. Archie was her first man. This likely influenced his decision to propose marriage after the pregnancy news. He took her to meet his mother. When she saw the future daughter-in-law, she grimaced slightly, and when she learned about the girl's life circumstances, she rolled her eyes. She didn't want such a bride for her golden boy. But she didn't argue with him about such matters. Perhaps she even enjoyed the chance to play benefactor a bit. It was tempting after all, because who was Olivia? A girl from the village, an orphan, living in a dorm, working as a waitress in some greasy spoon. I mean, what kind of waitress? Just a regular server, and on the side, she did everything else, dishwashing, cleaning, basically whatever was needed. "You're lucky, dear, you managed to catch Archie," her mother-in-law said when preparations for the wedding were underway. "But I have nothing against it and am even glad that my son turned out to be a decent person who didn't abandon you in this situation. Live together, let's see what comes of it. Finish working where you are until your maternity leave, and then I'll get you a job at my restaurant. It's not a dive, after all." Although the cafe where Olivia worked before marriage was neither a dive nor a greasy spoon but rather a decent place, and working there wasn't so bad. To be honest, it was better than this restaurant, where everyone initially thought she was a snitch. Later they realized that, despite being a close relative of the owner, Olivia was actually the lowest-ranking person in the establishment. All the blame fell on her. She was given more work than others, and even had to surrender her tips. The wedding was held at her mother-in-law's restaurant. Olivia and Archie lived in the mother-in-law's apartment. Olivia was a bit surprised that they had to live with her mother-in-law. She had hoped for some independence. But her husband said it wasn't necessary. Why spend money on rent when there was perfectly good housing available? The apartment was indeed nice, but Olivia found herself in the position of a housemaid. Before her son had married, Jill had had a housemaid. But once the daughter-in-law arrived, the owner apparently decided that a housemaid was no longer necessary and let go of the elderly woman. She left with a sigh of relief and confessed to the young mistress, "Oh, to be honest, I've wanted to leave for a long time. You wouldn't want to work with such a snake, and now, dear, you'll have to do everything for free. You probably think you've hit the jackpot?" "Oh, I doubt it." At first, Olivia dismissed all doubts, believing that her mother-in-law would come around and feel at least respect for her, if not love. She hoped that her mother-in-law would treat her like family, especially since a grandson was on the way, and Jill would surely love her grandson. After all, they say grandmothers love their grandchildren more than their own children, and she couldn't get enough of her Archie. But time passed, and no familial warmth emerged from her mother-in-law, and even the birth of Ethan didn't change Olivia's unfortunate situation. It wasn't that the grandmother didn't love her grandson or treated him badly. She was more indifferent, occasionally getting annoyed. Sometimes he cried too loudly, ran too fast, or stomped too much. "He's just a little one," Olivia weakly protested, naturally loving her son and increasingly realizing that he was her only truly loving and close family member. Her relationship with her husband had cooled even before the baby was born, and there was never any warmth with the mother-in-law. She had married a wealthy man. But what good was this wealth to her? She lived better before marriage. Indeed, that was true. At least it was calmer and more joyful. And now? What kind of life is this? She didn't understand. More work, less money, and no love or happiness. Why did she need all this? She began to consider divorce, but was afraid. Where would she go with a child? The most unpleasant realization was that she soon understood her husband had not left his bachelor habits behind. In other words, Archie was cheating on her. At first, it was just suspicions, but over time, they became more and more certain. Naturally, she tried to confront her husband both indirectly and directly, asking where he disappeared to all day and sometimes at night. "Why is she so indifferent towards both me and even my son?" But he either pretended not to understand her complaints or genuinely didn't get them. "What's the problem?" "I married you," her husband would say irritably. "If I married you, it means I love you. If I live with you, it means everything is fine between us. What don't you like?" "I don't understand." "But you're not even spending the nights at home. Moreover, I was told that they saw you with a woman," Olivia bitterly complained. "That, it might have been a business meeting or something. You need to stop listening to gossip. It's strange, when it's something serious, you don't hear it, but when some unknown person talks bad about me, you hang on to every word." "I don't like it either," Olivia sighed in response. But she couldn't be more decisive. There was no one but her husband. Where could she go? Who could help if something happened? It's hard being a lonely person, but now she understood, it's even harder to be lonely where you hope to find understanding and support. For a while, Olivia realized that she actually had neither a husband nor a mother-in-law. She was simply forced to live with people who were using her. But who was forcing her? No one but herself and her fears. This understanding came after her fellow waitresses, who had long been quietly mocking her, began to speak openly. "I don't understand, Olivia, how you tolerate this. We all are just amazed. To work like a slave for your own mother-in-law while her son is openly cheating on you. They want to drive you out of the house, and they'll succeed. Why? To live in the street? Olivia honestly didn't quite understand. Don't you know who your Archie is involved with? He's actually living with Amelia, who works here too. But she's not a waitress, she carries a briefcase. Your second mom hired her as an accountant. She's all dressed up in a suit, happy and satisfied. With her? Olivia was surprised. Yes, she had seen Amelia, a genuinely beautiful and self-assured girl. She had suspected that Archie might be interested in her, but to hear this from her colleagues. Yes, Olivia, open your eyes already. It's her. And of course, your mother-in-law knows all about this. If he's hiding anything, it's only from you, who seems happy to be deceived. The banquet was held at our restaurant. Your people probably gave you the day off to keep you out of the way while Archie was hugging and kissing Amelia here. Among everyone here, look, Gwen even took a short video on her phone. Gwen, show it. One of the girls presented a short video showing Olivia's husband embracing and kissing the accountant, then leaving somewhere with her. There you go. Did you see that? Here you serve and fetch. And at home, you're probably in the same position. But at your mother-in-law's place, Amelia is in the spotlight. And you're the wife of her son and the mother of her grandson. Where is it ever seen for someone to be treated so disrespectfully? And a person similar to her agrees with this. I don't agree, Olivia sighed and then decided to take active measures. Jill arrived at the restaurant in the afternoon, as usual, looking preoccupied and serious. She inspected the dining area thoroughly and, deciding everything was in order, locked herself in her office. She had a lot to think about, and these thoughts were primarily about her family matters and problems. They were not easy thoughts. She was fully aware that she was about to do something wrong, unfair, even vile. But her conscience was being overshadowed by her maternal instinct, the very maternal love that could justify a lot. Yes, I'm going to do something terrible, but it's not for myself, it's for my son. I have to take care of him, I can't leave him completely helpless, she thought. Jill loved her Archie very much and was willing to do a lot for him. She had always known this, but now it was time to prove it. The thing is, she had recently discovered that her chronic illness was not just some disease that could be cured or at least managed. Her illness was fatal, and soon she would leave her son without the support and help to which he had become so accustomed. Yes, she was a smart woman and understood perfectly that she had spoiled her son with her constant indulgence. But, first of all, the deed was done, and secondly, she couldn't have done otherwise. She loved him so much, there was no one else to love, so everything went to Archie. Overall, he had grown into a decent person, he studied well and was a polite and respectful son. Yes, he didn't always behave properly with women, but who can blame a young man for that? Women should think for themselves and protect their own honor. And what exactly is Archie guilty of? He doesn't deceive or mistreat them, they meet, date, and part ways. So what's wrong with that? When he met an innocent and vulnerable girl, who was his first and got pregnant almost after the first date, he immediately said he would marry her. That was also a very decent action. It was Jill's fault for not seeing it as the worst option. Ah, so she didn't resist. If she had wanted to, she could have insisted, and there would have been no wedding and no Olivia in their lives. Archie, at 18, was very young, and he wanted to get married to some girl, even though she was about 3 years older than him and already married. So she waved her hand, spoke to the bride, and now the bride was nowhere to be found. At least she was no longer in their lives. But now she is ideal. It can be said that the mother is preparing to leave her son, to leave him without her help and support. He grew up careless and spoiled. He's not succeeding at work, even though he graduated from college with a suitable profession. He could have been a decent manager. But what kind of leader is he? Although if he had become the sole owner of a thriving restaurant, he would have managed somehow. But the key word here is thriving, and her establishment is already on the brink of bankruptcy. So if she suddenly dies, she will leave her son not with capital, but with a pile of debts and a complete lack of understanding of how to move forward. And with a wife who has no education, no intelligence, and no imagination. To be honest, Olivia is a good housekeeper, and probably a good wife too, but that's not enough. She can't help her husband, give advice, or guide him wisely. Recently, he had started a fairly successful affair with the accountant, Amelia. One could have left the son to her, perhaps, but for that, Archie would first need to get a divorce. However, Jill decided to postpone the divorce because she had a completely different idea on the matter. The very idea that she deep down considered unethical, and if you dig even deeper, despicable. But it's all for the sake of the son, for his future, whether it's with Amelia or Olivia. Yes, with anyone, but she had planned this, to write a will and leave the restaurant not to her son, but to her daughter-in-law. And not out of great love for Olivia, but quite the opposite. Before her death, she decided first to take a very large loan, but to structure it in such a way that the new owner would be the one responsible for repaying it. Of course, the money would go to her son. Thus, Archie would be left with capital and the restaurant, and dealing with the loan would be her problem. Of course, she has no knowledge or skills, but she'll somehow manage. Even with such a large debt, no one would send her to prison or kill her. Well, it would cause some concern and inconvenience. But it's nothing serious. The girl may be timid, but she's a strong orphan. In the end, she'll figure out how to handle such situations. There were rustling sounds in the office. Vanessa called her daughter-in-law for a conversation. How was she to know that Olivia was already prepared for a serious talk, but not the one she was about to have with her mother-in-law today, as she was planning to tell her that she was resigning and divorcing Archie? That's how she entered the office, but before she could say a word, Jill said, "Sit down, Olivia. I have a very serious talk with you. I know perfectly well that I have often been unfair to you, hurt you, and paid you little attention. I also know that I have not been very easy on you lately, but don't think that I have no conscience at all. I've decided to do something for you. Look here. I've written a will. According to it, the restaurant will pass solely into your ownership." She looked at her daughter-in-law, expecting tears of joy and heartfelt thanks. But it turned out differently. "I don't quite understand why you're doing this," said Olivia. "Don't waste time, but I also have a message for you. Vanessa is getting divorced today, so all the best. I don't want to deal with traitors anymore." Smiling in her mother-in-law's face, Olivia left the office, went to the dressing room to gather her things, bumping into Amelia on the way, who happened to be in her path. The mother-in-law sat there with her wool in her hands. She understood what was happening. The accountant peeked into the office. She found the scene strange too. Jill asked, "Is Archie here?" "No, he's not," Olivia replied, frightened by the boss's expression. "He's already gone home." "That's good," Jill said, and also began to gather her things to go home. At first, she was confused, not understanding what had happened. What had gotten into Olivia? But as she drove home, she pieced things together and realized that Olivia must have already been informed about her husband's affair with Amelia, and, unable to tolerate it, she decided to leave. Even the prospect of becoming the owner of the restaurant didn't make her happy or inspire her. That said something. She entered the apartment angry with Archie, who had ruined all her plans. "Archie, come here, we need to talk," his mother yelled and went into her room. He appeared with a disgruntled look. "Mom, what's wrong? Do you want to argue?" Jill clearly didn't bode well for him. "I want to hit you," she said, never having raised her hand before. "My plans, how did you ruin them?" "What plans?" "I didn't." "You took a mistress at work, without hiding it while your wife is still alive," the mother spat out. "And the matter is trivial. Since when do you care so much about Olivia?" Jill's voice began to crack with hysteria. "Since when?" And Jill, practically in a frenzy, shouted everything to her son. She hadn't wanted to, she had kept it in, but since it had come to this, she couldn't hold back. She told him everything as it was, about how she wanted to bequeath the restaurant, which could be said to already belong to the daughter-in-law, and how to arrange the loan. What hit Archie hardest was the last piece of news. The thought of his mother possibly not being around was terrifying to him. For him, it practically meant disaster. He understood well that everything depended on her. "Mom, how could you?" he exclaimed, falling to his knees in front of her chair. "This can't be happening. It's just unbelievable. Yes, I've been going in and out of doctors for the last 6 months, of course, getting treated. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here now. And you know, Archie, I don't even mind. At least I'll find peace in the next world," his mother said calmly. "Understand, I wanted to provide for you so that after my death, you wouldn't need anything." "Mom, don't say things like that. I don't want to need anything, and I don't need anything. The main thing is that you live," he said, almost crying. "I understand. Where would you be without me?" Jill replied, irritably pushing her son away. "And admitted, my plan was quite good, but thanks to your irresponsibility, it seems nothing will come of it." "Then why did you let her go? You should have run after her, persuaded her to stay, accept this unfortunate inheritance, and be humiliated in front of everyone." "But no, sorry, I'm not ready for that," Jill replied. "Now you run around, apologize, promise, do whatever you need to, but make sure she comes back." "Well, I'll try. If things have come to this, I guess I'm in for it too. I don't know what's what, but do your best. Be kind, get along with her, and convince her to accept the inheritance. Then everything will be fine. You can marry anyone you want or never marry at all. You can do whatever you want." "Mom, the main thing for me is that you live," Archie exclaimed. "Oh, what's the point? What's the use if everything turns against me?" But in the end, mother and son reconciled. Archie wasn't someone you could stay angry with for long, plus he was confident Olivia would come back home. Perhaps they would argue, cry, and eventually make up. After all, where else could she go except to continue living with him? In the end, both settled on this thought and calmed down a bit. Olivia, however, had no intention of forgiving either her husband or her mother-in-law. On the same day, after resigning, she accepted Linda's offer to stay with her for a while. She suddenly felt such relief that she even burst into tears. "What's wrong, Olivia?" Linda asked, concerned. "Are you crying out of joy? You have no idea how relieved I feel, like a ton of weight has been lifted off me. It's wonderful." "Well, don't cry then. You can stay with Ethan at my place. I won't kick you out." "Thank you, Linda. I won't stay long. I've already found a job for myself." "Really? That quickly? Where?" "At a restaurant." "No, I can't stand restaurants anymore. It's a flower shop." There's a small one not far from here. Yes, the pay is about the same, but the work is much more pleasant. I've always loved flowers, and I'm sure I'll do well. I even went there and made arrangements. The manager said he'd hire me as a florist without any problems. So, I have a job, which means I'll have a salary. I'll rent a room, and Ethan and I will live better than ever. That's great. But don't forget, you still need to get child support. Will you be able to get anything from that company? They'll squeeze every penny. So what if they do? Why would they want to deal with lawsuits? So don't even think about it. Of course, you'll get child support and a salary, and who knows, maybe you'll even get married. Oh, marriage is the last thing I'm thinking about. All that can wait, Olivia replied sincerely. Indeed, she wasn't thinking about that at all. Right now, the most important thing was to finalize the divorce without any losses. Child support would be good, of course, but if Archie starts avoiding payments, she certainly wouldn't be running after him. It's better to work more and earn an extra penny. Things went quite well for her. Olivia herself seemed to blossom like a flower, relieved of what had been ruining her life. Ethan agreed that life was much better now. "Are we never going back home?" he asked one day. "I don't think so." "Do you regret it? Would you have liked to live with Dad and Grandma?" "No. And I barely lived with them. Dad is never around, and Grandma is always scolding me and saying I run and jump too much. How can I not run and jump? And why would I live there if I can't do anything? She's always criticizing me. Sitting in front of the TV is harmful, and running around isn't allowed." Well, here there's definitely freedom. This is how a 5-year-old child negatively defined his life with his own father and grandmother and assessed the advantage of staying in a different home. Of course, she still had to visit her husband's and mother-in-law's house to collect her and her son's belongings, as well as documents. Just think about it, how can a boy grow up without a father? Pathetically, she'll have other sons and you'll raise them properly, as you want. But please leave us alone. I've already filed for divorce. Let's get through it calmly, without tragedies and tears. Olivia promised that everything would be fine, even hinted at her fatal illness, but the daughter-in-law had already become so accustomed to living freely and working at an interesting job in just a few days that these assurances no longer affected her. "Sorry if I caused you any concern with my departure, but I think you'll quickly calm down," Olivia said. "And you'll see that we're much better off without each other. Olivia will be a much better match for your son. And for you, she'll be a better daughter-in-law with shared interests. She'll be much more beneficial to the restaurant." "What am I?" "Just a server. Anyone can do that." "Olivia, but I told you I wanted to leave the restaurant to you. You would be the owner, the businesswoman." "Don't you want that?" wondered the former mother-in-law. "I don't want it at all," Olivia replied. "I assure you, I'll be a much more practical owner." She hurried to leave to avoid hearing any more of these pleas. Jill had to come to terms with it. Maybe Olivia was right, and she would be a better fit for the role of owner. In any case, she would understand better why she wanted to get rid of her establishment. Yes, she understood business, knew that the restaurant would have to be closed and would leave nothing but debts. But taking on the debts herself was out of the question. What was left for the unfortunate woman to do? Only to reproach her son again, which she sometimes did. Although, of course, she didn't want to quarrel with Archie, especially at a time when it was possible she had little time left to live. She was well aware of this and wanted to spend her remaining days in peace. How much more at peace she would be if Olivia had agreed to become the heir. And how is it that Archie, who was so good and loving, let his mother down? Olivia was even grateful to her ex-husband for at least not hiding, and, although he embarrassed her in front of people, he still gave her a chance to realize her mistakes and understand the necessity of the divorce. Otherwise, Olivia wondered how much longer she would have hesitated. Now she was free, relieved from the endless complaints and reproaches she constantly heard from her mother-in-law. At her new job, they never tired of praising her. "Since you've come, sales have increased." Olivia truly made an effort. She not only loved flowers but also knew about them. She could tell each customer something, explain how and where to best place bouquets so they wouldn't wilt quickly, and how to care for potted plants. She always found kind words for each client, and people really began to love the small shop. When she was finalizing her divorce, the senior saleswoman who had worked with Alex for a long time jokingly said, "Well, soon you'll be a free person. Why not pay some attention to our Alex?" "Which Alex?" Olivia didn't immediately understand. "Alex, the owner." "Well, he's a young man. How long can it go on? You should get something for yourself too. You live alone with your child." Alex has been living with someone for less than a year. There was such love, but then she ended up in some kind of disaster, and he was very upset. But it's been 3 years now, he must have moved on a bit. Although he hasn't started any new relationships. But he seems to like you. Well, I don't know. He's a good person, but you know, it's better without engagements, Olivia replied. I still love my late husband, even though he's been gone for 10 years. And I've been married to someone else for 5 years now. I love my second husband in my own way, but I haven't forgotten the first one. I sometimes cry for him. Olivia understood that she needed to live like everyone else and wanted a complete family life, but she hadn't considered Alex or any other man as a potential partner at that time. She thought it was foolish to look for the next husband right after a divorce. Maybe later, in time, when she had forgotten all the troubles caused by Archie, she would thaw and think about arranging her personal life. However, Melissa, the senior saleswoman, had sown the necessary seeds. Olivia began to view Alex with different eyes, not just as a boss, and couldn't help but notice that he also saw her as more than just an employee. Yes, he praised and thanked her, but he also looked at her with interest as a woman. With her first paycheck, Olivia started looking for an inexpensive rental apartment. After sharing her difficulties with her colleagues, she hoped someone would give her advice on where to find affordable housing, and they did. Surprisingly, her boss, slightly embarrassed, said, "Olivia, are you looking for an apartment? I have acquaintances who are going abroad for at least a year and would be happy to rent it out cheaply. Go take a look. If it suits you, you and your son can move in as soon as tomorrow." Olivia went to see the apartment, and it suited her perfectly. The apartment was indeed very nice and affordable. The next day, she invited her colleagues and, of course, Alex to the housewarming party. "Can I just drop by to visit, not just for the housewarming?" her boss asked as he was leaving the small gathering. "Of course," Olivia replied, blushing. "We'll be happy to see you, Ethan and I," Olivia said. She liked Alex. She felt that he liked her too, and perhaps he was the man she had dreamed of since childhood, the one who would save her from all her troubles and worries. Given the amount of trouble in her life, it was no surprise that their mutual affection quickly grew into love. Two lonely people began a relationship that might soon turn into something more permanent. But the ex-husband could not calm down and accept that Olivia had left him on her own. Especially since things with Archie were going from bad to worse, they had long been not going well. He just hadn't noticed it under his mother's wing, who might soon no longer be around. The thought of having to take responsibility for everything, including himself, terrified him. It seemed like a complete nightmare. Moreover, each passing day confirmed how bad his situation was. Bills for the restaurant kept coming, which needed to be paid, but there was no money. And now his wife had left. He was left alone, a forsaken bankrupt orphan. No, he wasn't willing to accept this situation, but he couldn't do anything about it because he didn't know how to or wasn't capable of improving his situation. So he decided to make Olivia's life miserable. Let her suffer. Especially when he learned that his ex-wife was not going to suffer and her life was improving. She even intended to marry the owner of some store. On the eve of the divorce, he contacted a lawyer and asked for help. He said he wanted to strip his ex-wife of parental rights and take their child away from her. I think it's possible to prove that Olivia is an absolutely immoral person. From a young age, she chose this path, jumping from one advantageous marriage to another. She married me for convenience, and now she's going off to marry some businessman. Besides, she doesn't even have her own home. That could also be used as an argument. Well, yes, if the case is framed correctly, said the lawyer, then she could be stripped of her rights, and the child could be awarded to the father, with her paying you alimony. Do you really want to take your son away? Of course, I'm his father, Archie exclaimed. In reality, he was little interested in his own son, and all these matters with him were unimportant to him. Everything started falling apart when she left. Jill supported her son's desire, although, to be honest, she was too unwell to care much. Meanwhile, Olivia was horrified to learn that he had money and connections. And what did she have? Nothing. She could only complain to Alex. You understand, he doesn't need Ethan. He just wants to ruin my life, she cried. Yes, I understand. And he understands too. A person can't be that mean, Alex said. You know, Olivia, I think it's worth talking to him, just to explain that what he's doing is wrong, taking his son away from his mother. Do you think it will help? Olivia asked. Alex and Olivia were able to talk to Archie. However, nothing good came of the conversation. Alex tried to speak in a businesslike tone, calmly trying to convey the main point: you can't separate a mother and her son. But Archie raised the tone of the conversation from the very beginning. I can be deprived of everything. He wants to take my child away and have you raise him. Dream on. Have your own kids, and give me mine. Everything will be as I said, he shouted. As a result, the men couldn't find common ground and almost came to blows. Their argument escalated into a small scuffle, initiated by Archie. The meeting took place in a fairly crowded area, and there were plenty of witnesses to the conversation. Realizing that he wouldn't get anywhere with Archie, Alex simply gave up and left. On his way home, Archie approached a group of thugs, said something nasty in a fit of anger, and ended up with some minor but noticeable injuries. That's exactly what he needed. With his bruises and scrapes, he went to the emergency room and then to the police, where he filed a report against Alex, accusing him of assault. Yes, it turned out that the person was even more despicable than one might have expected. A criminal case was opened against Alex. Olivia was in despair. Her ex-husband seemed to be seriously trying to ruin her life, and he was succeeding. But was Alex really facing imprisonment? Perhaps not a very long one, since Archie hadn't sustained serious injuries, but Alex was entirely innocent. Even a short sentence would be horrible. Olivia felt utterly helpless. In this situation, Archie had an advantage in the fight for the child, and Olivia even wanted to meet with Jill to ask her to influence her son. After all, she was a mother and should understand the horror of the former daughter-in-law's position. But it didn't work out. Jill was in the hospital. Meanwhile, the injured party, That is, Archie met with Alex and told him that he could. Sorry, of course, but you understand, I need them desperately right now, and you must realize that if you get a short sentence, you'll have to forget about the business, and about Olivia too. I don't think she'll wait for you. There are plenty of similar stores around. Someone will take her, don't doubt it, Archie said boldly. Alex would have agreed to bribe the scoundrel, but he couldn't. He didn't have the money right now, having invested everything in purchasing goods. And in the near future, he would hardly be able to pay the demanded amount. The business wasn't profitable enough. Sorry, Alex, but I'm not interested in your problems. I have enough of my own. Not only is the business hanging by a thread, but my mother is in the hospital, and it's uncertain if she will survive. So you choose either money or prison. I'm in such a state that I can't think about someone else's troubles. My head is spinning. My mother's condition was indeed critical. However, suddenly the doctors said that things weren't as hopeless as they seemed. She could be saved, but it required a bone marrow cell transplant, and the problem now was not money but finding a suitable donor. Yes, I'm willing to donate as many cells as needed. We're the closest relatives. Surely I, as her son, can save her? Archie exclaimed. Tests were taken, and it turned out that Archie wasn't a suitable donor. They found a woman in the database who had been a donor before. Her cells would be a perfect match, but they couldn't locate her. The doctor showed Archie the details of this patient, and he saw that the most suitable match was his ex-wife Olivia. However, she was listed under her maiden name in the database, which was why they hadn't been able to find her. I know where she is. I'll bring her, and she'll agree, I'm sure, Archie said, forgetting how much trouble he had caused his ex-wife. But now the issue was not about money and business, but life and death. Olivia won't be able to refuse, he thought as he rushed to his ex-wife. You understand, Olivia, you can save her. You don't want my mother to die, do you? Well, maybe you had some disagreements, but everything can be forgotten in the face of a life-threatening situation. You're right. I don't wish anything bad for Jill, Olivia agreed. And I hope you don't wish any harm to me, our son, or even Alex. In such a dire situation, we could forget all the disagreements, as you call them. You must drop all claims to the child and withdraw the complaint against Alex. Only under these conditions will I agree to be a donor, she stated firmly. Archie hesitated. It wasn't that money was more important than his mother's life, but it was important, and he didn't want to give up the chance to get it from Alex, as he was sure that despite everything, the store owner would find a way to come up with the needed amount. However, Olivia was adamant. Persuading her was impossible, and he had no choice but to agree. But even after that, he thought not everything was lost for him. Fine, I'll take everything back, but you wait, darling, he thought. Once my mother recovers, we'll show you. The main thing is for her to get better. And you'll still find out what we're capable of, Archie thought, harboring growing malice. For now, he had to do as Olivia said, the complaints were withdrawn, and the necessary actions to save his former mother-in-law were taken. Jill, who was already in a coma, began to recover. Once she came to and realized the deadly threat had passed, her first desire was not to see her son but the donor who had saved her life. Strangely enough, she knew who it was and was neither offended nor upset. On the contrary, she was pleased. I hope Mom has enough strength to say everything she thinks. Well, a bit of thanks is appropriate, but she should understand that she's no savior. She simply fulfilled her human duty, nothing more. And no one is going to forget that she betrayed both me and Mom when she left us. So she shouldn't expect any special treatment. The complaints were collected and submitted again. Maybe they can be, but Olivia should know her place. Jill had enough strength. Seeing her daughter-in-law, she smiled through her tears. "Hello, my dear. I know you saved me, and thanks to you, I am still alive and breathing," she said in a weak voice. "Well, did you smile and pat her hand?" Olivia asked in surprise. The tone of her mother-in-law changed. She had never called her daughter before and didn't seem to consider her as such. "It's all thanks to the doctors. How are you feeling?" "Well, I'm still weak, but I already feel life returning. But that's not the main thing. I feel like a completely different person. While I was unconscious, it seemed like I was just lying there like a log, feeling and understanding nothing, but that's not the case. My mind was working, and there was a complete restructuring going on. My entire consciousness has changed. I realized that I had been living and behaving wrongly before. Maybe I understood that before, but I thought I had the right to behave that way. Yes, Olivia, don't argue. I understand perfectly well that I was a very bad mother-in-law to you and to my son. Essentially, a bad mother. If I had behaved differently, he would have turned out to be a good person instead of living in an atmosphere of constant submission to his whims." "Don't say that. Archie loves you very much and was very concerned about you," Olivia assured her. Her mother-in-law only shook her head. "About me? Rather, he worries that he is left without my care. And he is hardly capable of anything except destroying everything that has already been created. But not him. I blamed you for your divorce. But now I understand perfectly that the blame lies with him and me. We could have been so happy. And we will be," Olivia said. "Next time, I'll come with Ethan. He remembers you and sends his regards. By the way, he drew a picture." She showed her mother-in-law a sheet from a notebook with drawings of flowers, boats, and people walking around. "Thank you, my dear. You're doing well. You're raising your son well. I hope nothing will happen like what happened with his father. And I hope to recover. I'll try to sort out things or, at least, finish them because I don't want to own the restaurant anymore. I just want to live and be surrounded by good, loving, and loved people." The former mother-in-law and daughter-in-law parted on very good terms as they left the room. Olivia felt sorry for Jill and was very happy that the threat to her life had passed. She didn't even glance at Archie, who was sitting in the corridor, waiting for his turn to see his mother. He looked intently at his ex-wife, noticed the tears, and thought with satisfaction, "Well, that's good. The mother didn't let us down. She put this shoddy work in its place. Let her cry now. We'll wait for Mom to get back on her feet and be happy." However, the meeting with Jill turned out to be quite different from what he had expected. From the very beginning, the mother tried to convey everything Olivia had said. She spoke about how she had overestimated everything in her life, realized her mistakes, and decided to correct them to the best of her ability. However, she did not receive her son's understanding. "Mom, what are you talking about? What mistakes? We did everything right. And that's why you're alive and well and will live long and happily. It's Olivia who should not be proud of helping you. After all, she owes you much more. How long did she live in our house? Archie, stop looking at our house, it's disgusting." So many tears Olivia shed there. Have you forgotten about that? Maybe I've forgotten, but I remember perfectly. And now I understand that I have to atone for my guilt before her. And you should too. I see, interrupted her son with indignation. This cheeky woman has already managed to plant some silly ideas in your head. Or maybe it's all the donation's fault. Did something transfer from her to you? And what exactly are we obliged for? What guilt do we need to atone for? I don't know, Mom, what you're planning to do, but you need to answer for everything you've done to us. Ah, Archie, I see talking to you is pointless, Jill sighed. Tell me instead, how are things with the restaurant? What about Amelia? With the restaurant? Nothing good, of course, just debts. I don't know what to do about all this. You don't know, Mom, how much I miss you. Get well soon, and then everything will be fine. Olivia? Well, what about Olivia? We're together, of course, and she's a very smart woman, helps with everything. In short, she helps with entertainment, going out, I have no doubt about that. Do you have no competitors? The mother sighed again. I can't wait for the moment when I can finally leave the hospital and get back to business. Are you not planning to pass the restaurant to me? The son asked, surprised. Well, you can manage it as always, but I'd like to become the owner myself. All right, what are you saying? It would be better if you could handle it. So, would you rather let it go to waste faster? The mother smiled. I don't think so. You need to think, son, about how to get rid of this loss-making property as soon as possible, pay off all the debts, and start a new life. I don't know about you, but I've already been thinking about certain things. Yes, Mom, I agree. I'm sure we need to sell the apartment. You and Amelia should live separately. And I need only a very small living space. What are you talking about, Mom? Separate living, especially now when you're still in a serious condition? You definitely need someone nearby, Archie said, alarmed. But I need to live alone. I have things to think about and activities to occupy myself with, Jill said firmly, and her son realized that arguing with his mother, as before, was pointless. After being discharged from the hospital, she started acting as she had planned. And, as her son feared, Archie didn't even have time to be happy about his mother's recovery because she was no longer the same. She turned from the best friend and ally into someone unrecognizable. First, she announced that she had no intention of reopening the restaurant. She would sell it to pay off all the debts. But how will we live? Archie was worried. The mother replied firmly, I think I raised you, gave you an education and a profession. I certainly didn't plan to support you until your retirement. Now you can earn for yourself. How? I don't know. You can start your own business or find a job somewhere. I need to think about my own life now. She indeed sold their large apartment, bought a small one, but not near her son, instead, close to Olivia. How could I not? Now she is a close person to me. Not to mention my dear grandson, whom I need to see more often so that he remembers his grandmother not as a mean aunt who forbade everything, but as a loving family member. She didn't concern herself with finding an apartment for her son, simply gave him money and said he could spend it as he wished. If you don't buy yourself an apartment, you'll be left without a home. But that's all. Archie was stunned by his mother's indifference to his fate. Jill, now an ordinary, not very wealthy woman, took a job at Olivia and Alex's flower shop and became a frequent, welcome guest in their home. She cared for her grandchildren, helped Olivia when possible, and felt truly happy, needed, and fulfilled. It was almost funny. As she neared the end of her life, she realized what true wealth was, she told Olivia, who had suddenly transformed from a former daughter-in-law into a beloved daughter. And Archie, apparently, also needed some kind of jolt to rid himself of his anger toward the world. But since he didn't get it, he decided to become rich out of spite. He tried to start his own business with the money from selling the apartment, but failed. Apparently, things done out of spite never lead to good outcomes. Seeing the failure of her lover, Olivia left him. She certainly didn't need such a life partner.